got to go round. Talking about your troubles, it's a crying sin. Ride a painted pony, let the spinning wheel spin.
The year was 1968, and the world was in turmoil. The small-scale outbreak in Southeast Asia was getting out of control and heading into full-scale war. Political assassinations were becoming a regular occurrence, with the shootings of Bobby Kennedy and civil rights campaigner Martin Luther King. In Europe, Russian tanks were marching on Prague, and riots were breaking out on the streets of Paris. Whilst in the US, the heat was rising. Streets were becoming war zones. And the world was looking for answers. Christmas Day 1968, and in the snowy Canadian city of Toronto, a child is born. Separated by 2 weeks and half the radius of the planet, another boy is brought into the world. He too shares a birthday with a king, but unlike the first, who followed 3 of 6 girls, he is the third and final son. Will these 2 boys bring light and life to a dark, decaying world? Hardly likely, but chance shall bring them together 8 years and thousands of miles away from their place of birth in Melbourne, Australia. Michael Klavac was born the third son of George and Annette in Singapore. His brothers, Justin and Anthony, were both much taller than him, causing him to often wonder aloud that he was adopted. Having moved to Melbourne, he grew up in Caulfield, then moved to Kew, and as a young man he showed great prowess in track and field, particularly the high jump.
Foch was the first son born to Michael and Elizabeth, after 3 daughters. Such was their shock at having a boy, that for the first 2 weeks of his life he was known as Bridget. Child services stepped in, and they eventually named him John. But despite being born in Toronto, his life as a Canuck didn't last long as the family moved back to New Zealand, then on to Australia in the early 70s. They would have 3 more daughters, leaving Fogs as the single thorn amongst a beautiful bunch of roses. Despite the lack of brothers, Fogs soon found himself to be the star player in his Me, Myself and I football team, dreaming of future glories with his beloved Tigers. The bruises in his sisters' backs from the countless screams that he took to the cries of Roach in the goal square were testament to his desire to make the big league.
Mick was also no slouch in the sporting arena, demonstrated when he came to St Kevin's and duly took out the gold medal in athletics in under 9 and under 10. Such was his speed, he was nicknamed Doggy.
1980 was a watershed year at Skevvies, with the arrival of an intake of students that would have become lifelong mates for us.
The grade 6 green year had plenty of highlights, but clearly not enough to keep Mick, as the next year he moved on to Xavier.
Although, despite the parting of the ways, it was not the end of our friendship, as we found a new way of staying in contact, based around a concentrated commitment to wagging mass every Sunday.
Aye, oh, let's go! Aye, oh, let's go! Aye, oh, let's go! Aye, oh, let's go! The Providence.
Yes, it was a cunning plan, worthy of Baldrick. I would tell my folks that I was going to 12 o'clock mass, midday mass, when lo and behold, I would run into Mick Klavac, and then I would go back to your place.
We'd usually watch the Sydney Swans.
Ah yes, we'd watch Warwick Capo try and take ridiculous grabs.
And then, of course, at 5 o'clock, I'd say to my parents, well, John and I obviously off to mass.
And in fact, we would go down to my place at 5 o'clock and watch the winners with Drew Morford or something like that.
Exactly. It was a friendship based on deceiving our parents and losing our faith.
Lapsing our faith.
Lapsing our faith. And it was a great way of reinitiating or starting up the friendship that had been vacant for about 3 years.
But it all came unstuck.
Our parents, of course, had the inevitable dinner party. The topic of our friendship and our devotion to mass was brought up. The two families disagreeing on the important point of when we actually attend
Exactly
mass.
right.
Why couldn't she have just said? Why couldn't she have just said go to mass together instead of midday mass? Because then of course, my mother said, "Well, sorry, Elizabeth, I think it's 5 o'clock mass that they attend together." That's where it ended. We'd just go for then hour-long drives.
Hour-long drives and buy Slurpees.
Yeah, exactly.
And the Maserati.
And that, of course, led us into a stage from 17 to 21. However, look, we're not going to go through the details of that period. That's been well and truly documented at 21st speeches and 30ths.
Correct.